Imagine a poor boy from a small town who would one day change the world of music forever. His name was Elvis Presley. The world would come to know him as the King of Rock and Roll. But behind that title, there was a story rarely told. A story of loneliness, pressure, and a life that slowly fell apart. This is not just a story about success. This is the story of a man who lost himself at the very top. Elvis Aaron Presley was born on January 8, 1935, in Tupelo, Mississippi. He grew up in a very poor family, a small two-room house, and a life full of limitations. But in the middle of that struggle, there was one thing that stayed with him: music. As a child, Elvis spent a lot of time in church, listening to gospel songs filled with emotion and soul. Those sounds would later shape his unique voice. At the age of 11, he received his first guitar. A simple gift that would change his life forever. As a teenager, Elvis moved to Memphis, Tennessee. This was where everything began to come together. He was surrounded by different musical influences: blues, country, and gospel. But Elvis didn't just copy them, he blended them into something new. In 1954, he walked into Sun's studio and recorded his first song. That's All Right. At the time, it seemed like just another recording, but in reality, it was the beginning of a revolution. Slowly but surely, people started to notice. And Elvis was no longer just a regular young man. In 1956, everything changed. His song Heartbreak Hotel became a massive hit. He started appearing on national television, and suddenly all of America was watching him. But it wasn't just his voice, it was his energy, his movements, his presence on stage. Some called it exciting, others called it dangerous. His performance style was considered controversial. Older generations saw him as a threat. But young people, they loved him. The more he was criticized, the bigger he became. Elvis was no longer just a singer. He was a cultural phenomenon. The face of rock and roll. At the height of his career, Elvis Presley was everywhere. He starred in movies, he released hit after hit. He sold millions of records worldwide. He became one of the biggest stars on the planet. His home, Graceland, became a symbol of success and fame. Everything he touched turned into gold. But behind the spotlight, something was changing. The pressure was starting to build. behind the fame, Elvis's personal life was far from perfect. He married Priscilla Presley, but the relationship didn't last. The constant pressure, the endless schedule, the expectations from the world began to take a toll on him. To cope with exhaustion and stress, Elvis turned to prescription drugs. At first, it was just to sleep. Then, to stay awake. And slowly, it became something he couldn't control. On the outside, he still looked like a king. But inside, he was falling apart. By the 1970s, the changes became impossible to ignore. His health was getting worse. His weight increased significantly. His performances became inconsistent. He was still on stage, but he wasn't the same Elvis anymore. Fans continued to cheer. They still believed in the king, but the truth was, he was drifting further and further away from the person he once was. A legend, slowly fading. On August 16th, 1977, the world stood still. Elvis Presley was found dead at his home in Graceland. He was only 42 years old. The cause? Health complications worsened by years of drug use. His death shocked millions. But his legacy never died. His music still lives on. His influence is still everywhere. From a poor boy in Mississippi to one of the greatest icons in history.